So how did our little birdies do for their first night out? They did okay. Just like every one of our birds, they have to spend the night in their coop. Now, this morning, they were a little hesitant to come out. So I had to open the side door, the cleaning door really, to the coop. And interestingly, even though it was the very first night that they spent in the coop, they are already looking at it for safety and security. Now, Bailey is being Bailey, and he is absolutely determined to run around and drive them nuts. But that's okay. One, they're used to him running underneath the brooder already. You can see they're a little bothered by him, but they're starting to figure out that they can't be touched. And all of this is important acclimation to moving into the big flock. When they're in, everybody's thirsty. When they're in with the big flock, they are open to foxes running by, the dogs running by, things going overhead. And they need to be able to discern safety from danger. And so by understanding that the dogs are safe, right? And you can see they're clearly not bothered by them anymore. And here's Sophie, who's back from checking on the opossum under the big coop. Yes, she's obsessed. And every time she comes out now, she heads straight there to check on him and see what she can excavate. But they're not bothered anymore. The first few seconds were a little stressful, right? Oh my gosh, dogs, new place. Now they're kind of like, woo, we got water, we got food, we're ready to rock and roll. I love the little circle. It's so cute. They're stepping all over each other, but there's no stress, right? They're completely relaxed. They're doing what they're supposed to do. They're having a drink. The dogs are running amok. And they may pick their heads up and look, but they're no longer concerned about the dogs. And that is exactly what we want, because we don't want them to live a life that's stressed. We don't want them to live a life where they're constantly thinking they're under threat. So they need to be acclimated to the dogs. They need to be acclimated to the fact that things go outside the fence line, and as long as they're inside a fence line, they're safe. A couple of things with that, right? This fence line looks exactly the same as the fence line around our big area. So they will translate that pretty quickly to, this is safety, right? This is my fence line. This is my protective barrier. Now it's time for breakfast. Everybody had a drink, breakfast, drink, breakfast, and they go back and forth. And they make an absolute mess out of their feeder. They spread food everywhere, which is why they have yesterday's food ring is there, and the feeder is now somewhere else. But yeah, so moving to this area here is about, one, getting used to having lots of space, which they haven't really explored yet, right? They haven't really come down to this side yet. They're still staying pretty safe and secure in, I'll call it tight quarters. And that's okay, it's only day 2. They get acclimated to being in a coop at night and having to get rounded up to go into that coop. So last night was their first night having to get shuttled into the coop. And then this morning, as I mentioned, it took a few minutes for them to decide to come out. So they're already starting to see that as safe zone. And they're sorry, I distracted by the duck deciding to stretch his little stubby wings, which is hilarious. They're already starting to see coop as safe area, safe spot. Their food and water is far enough away that they have to come out to eat and drink, because we don't want to encourage them to live in the coop, right? They need the outdoors. But it's close enough that they can scurry back if they feel they want that security and safety. And today, my guess will be that they really start to explore the space. and the extra room that they have, and they'll start to look for bugs along the edges, and they'll really start to understand the dynamics of their new living space, living quarters, and this is the perfect way to get them acclimated to move to the big flock. So the move to the big flock will probably be, let's call it, this is really end of June. End of July, early August is probably when I'll move them into the big flock. They could move a lot sooner. The reason I don't move them sooner is I prefer them to be pretty close to full grown when I move them into the big flock. It's easier to handle them out there when they're this little, and they are still little. It's hard to get them rounded up around that pond. They could fall in the pond and they'll have a harder time getting out because their body, they're still so tiny in comparison to the size of the pond. And it's just too risky, my opinion, right? Once they're full grown size, they acclimate into the flock better. They aren't, they don't get picked on. They're not treated as babies. They're just treated as new flock members. They have more strength, more stamina to be able to manage drinking from the pond and not falling in, but also if they do fall in, manage getting out. Because yes, the chickens do fall into the pond every once in a while, and chickens float, which is fun, but they have to have enough common sense to be able to move themselves back to the edge. Usually they're not very far from the edge, and as long as they don't panic, they just walk right back out. But, we have to keep that all in mind. So day 2 of acclimating to the big grow out pen is working well, and I'm going to leave them to do their thing because they're pretty much just having a blast eating, drinking, and they're starting now to say, okay, we've had our breakfast food, we've had our eat and drink, we can start to peck around and explore a little bit, and so we'll leave them to it. I'll keep you posted on the update, but things are looking good right now. All right, guys, until next time, there's work to be done. Bye for now.